Welcome to my Before 1900s horror channel. Tonight, we travel back to the centuries before the 1900s to hear a true horror story. 3 men were assigned to a lighthouse. The light was found extinguished. The doors were unlocked. A meal sat unfinished. And yet, every keeper of the Flannan Isles Lighthouse was gone. No witnesses, no bodies, no answers. Stay with us tonight. Let's begin our story. December 26, 1900. A desolate rock lying in the North Atlantic, the Eilean Mòr. When the Hesperus ship approached the island, it was unusually quiet. The ship's captain gave signals, sounded the siren. But there was no sign of the North. The island's lighthouse was lifeless, like a huge rocky tomb. Captain Harvey noticed that no flag was flying on the jetty. No one was coming forward to unload the goods, although there were supposed to be 3 experienced men there. Assistant keeper Joseph Moore decided to go down to the island alone. As he climbed the stairs, the sound of his footsteps echoed off the rocks. There was no sound except the roar of the sea. The main gate of the lighthouse was barred from the outside. When Moore pushed the door open and entered, a strangely cold wind greeted him. There was no life inside. Moore's body froze as he looked into the kitchen. Half-eaten food lay on the table. The pieces of meat and potatoes were still arranged on the plate, as if someone had gotten up halfway through. A chair had fallen over on the floor, as if someone had hurriedly left the table and stood up. The clock on the wall had stopped at exactly 2 o'clock. Moore went upstairs to the bedroom. There, all 3 beds were neatly made. The chandeliers were cleaned, the lampshades trimmed. Everything was perfectly normal. But at one point, Moore stopped. He noticed the coat hooks by the door. There was only one greasy raincoat hanging there. It was bitterly cold and raining outside. No season keeper was supposed to go out without his heavy raincoat. Yet 2 of the keepers had gone out with their coats. Why did the 3rd, Donald McArthur, go out without his coat? Had he seen something that had not even given him time to dress? The entire lighthouse was searched. There was no sign of a struggle, no bloodstains. Only an infinite and solid silence reigned throughout the house. On the north shore of the island, an even stranger sight was seen. The iron railings were twisted, as if some monstrous hand had bent them like toys. The huge supply boxes that had been stored on the rocks had disappeared. They were about 110 feet above sea level. It was almost impossible for water to reach that height. Captain Harvey sent a telegram to the mainland. A terrible accident has occurred on the Flannan Islands. Marshall, Ducat, and MacArthur have vanished like camphor from the air. When the investigators reached the island, they found the lighthouse logbook or diary. The last pages of that book were truly frightening and mysterious. Thomas Marshall wrote in his December 12th entry, "A terrible storm. I have not seen such a wind in 20 years. James Ducat was very quiet today." More strange information is that the strong keeper William McArthur was said to have sat down and cried. What could be the reason for the tears of a man who had spent his whole life at sea? The last entry in the logbook, December 15th, was even shorter. It read, "The storm has ceased. The sea is calm. All is well. God help us." But the sea documents and the claims of the people of the neighboring islands were different. On December 15th, there was no storm in that area. The weather was perfectly clear. So what storm were the keepers talking about? Were they writing about real weather? Or was some other darkness gathering before their eyes? The investigators noticed that the keys to the lighthouse were not in their designated places. This meant that they had locked the door when they left. This was not a sign of a sudden accident. A keeper might break the rules, but 3 experienced men together would be impossible to break the rules and disappear. Were they fighting among themselves? Or was something else chasing them? According to folklore, Eilean Mòr is the island of the 7 hunters. The ancient inhabitants believed that setting foot on this island required permission from invisible spirits. For centuries, sailors had avoided the island. They believed that there was something here that was beyond human reason. The 3 empty beds added weight to that belief. As the investigation went deeper, a strange anomaly was revealed. The iron railings on the western edge of the island had bent in a way that no ordinary tidal wave could have. A supply box weighing several tons that had been stored there had disappeared. The ropes that were stuck in the rock crevices had torn off, and the hood had lifted, as if some gigantic force had torn them off. The official report said that a huge wave or freak wave swept them away. But this explanation leaves a huge gap: safety regulations. The lighthouse keepers knew that at least one person had to stay inside the tower during a storm. According to the rules, 3 people were not supposed to go out at once. Why did McArthur go out without his raincoat? In that bone-chilling December cold and in the rough seas, going out without a coat meant certain death. Was there a third party present on the island that day? Or did they see something that instantly turned their professionalism and intelligence to dust? Investigator Robert Muirhead noticed the overturned kitchen chair. This was not a sign of a natural disaster, but rather a reflection of a sudden panic. If the wave had swept them away, would they have had time to lock the door? Logic does not say so, but the master key to the island was missing. An unresolved question hangs between folklore and modern science. The island's original name was the Seven Hunters. Locals believe that the dead still come back to hunt here. The Eilean Mòr lighthouse can be seen from 18 miles away. However, no lights were lit on the night of December 15th. The steamer, Arcater, noticed the darkness. The documents say that the sea was calm that night. But was that imaginary storm only concentrated in the minds of the 3? Or did the island change their reality? James Ducat was a calm person. Why would an experienced keeper like him write a lie about a terrible storm in the logbook? There was a deep fear hidden behind this lie. Psychological analysts believe that the long loneliness and the roar of the sea created cabin fever or madness in them. Did they attack each other? But there was no sign of a fight or blood on the island. Every corner of the lighthouse was tidy. If there was one killer, his mark would be somewhere or the other. One theory is that they may have slipped while trying to rescue a bird trapped on the cliff. And while trying to save it, the other 2 drowned. But even this theory does not explain the mystery of not wearing a coat. A professional keeper does not forget about his own safety even in moments of extreme danger, unless the danger is supernatural. One shadow kept coming back again and again throughout the investigation: isolation. When 3 people were left alone in that vast body of water, the boundaries of human conscience and reason broke down. Robert Muirhead wrote in his report, "I can explain it with logic, but my heart tells me that something else happened here beyond logic." Over the next few years, new keepers were sent to the island. But they could not last long there. There was a strange similarity in their experiences. They said that when they cleaned the lighthouse glass in the dark of night, someone would call their names from outside. Those voices belonged to the missing 3. Behind the rustling of the wind, people could be heard whispering. Even in calm seas, they could hear the crashing of waves, which came not from under the lighthouse, but from inside. There were also rumors that the island's huge seabirds were actually the restless souls of the 3 keepers. They did not want to leave the island, and they did not let anyone stay. A search of past documents revealed that people had disappeared from this island before. Those who came to graze sheep would leave the island before sunset out of some unknown fear. This mystery of the Flannan Islands has been alive like an open wound since 1900. Even with modern technology, there has been no definitive solution to it. The investigation is over. The file is closed. But that mysterious late afternoon of December 15th still lingers in the rocky crevices of Eilean Mòr. Years passed, but the cursed stones of Eilean Mòr did not break their silence. Newcomers spoke of a strange, heavy wind. The wind did not just blow there, it whispered. The keepers saw strange shadows. Footsteps could be heard on the lighthouse steps, but no one could be found upstairs. Many claimed that the island's famous giant seabirds were not ordinary birds. They had a deep, human-like sadness hidden in their eyes. It was a common belief among sailors that the 3 keepers had never left the island. They had been trapped in a crevice of another world from which there was no return. The investigators began to analyze the last sentence of the diary again. All is well. God help us. Was this a message of relief or a silent cry? If everything was fine, why would an experienced keeper pray to God? God is remembered only when all control is lost from humans. One theory says that they may have been the victims of a secret military or pirate attack. But there was no sign of looting on the island, and the valuable oil and supplies were completely intact. Another terrifying possibility comes to mind: hysteria. Did the constant roar of the sea and boredom create such madness in them that they jumped into the sea themselves? But did all three go crazy at once? It is possible for one to go crazy, but it is almost impossible for three to make the same decision at the same time. But did some poisonous gas or spoiled food cause confusion in their brains? Did the mercury used in the lighthouse lamps disrupt their nervous system? These questions are still unresolved in the pages of history. Science has no answer to this. There are only some weak hypotheses. And behind those hypotheses lies a deep fear. These stories, centered around Eilean Mòr, gradually became part of Scottish folklore. The mother would tell her child the story of this haunted island to put her to sleep. In 1971, the lighthouse was fully automated. Since then, there is no longer any need for human guarding it. The island is now completely deserted. But those who travel by ship on that route still feel a strange emptiness when they look at the lighthouse from afar. There is no one there, yet it seems as if someone is there. When pictures are taken from the island with a modern-day drone camera, those bent railings still bear witness to that terrible event. That destruction is timeless. Science says that they are the work of powerful waves. But people's minds are still stuck in the mystery of that half-eaten meal and missing raincoat. Imagine that situation. There is no storm outside. The sea is calm. Yet you are sitting inside the house and hearing a terrible roar that no one else can hear. You see your partner, James Ducat, sitting in a chair, crying, and he doesn't even know why. Was it this invisible terror that drove them out of the house? Is there a vast cavity at the bottom of the sea that occasionally awakens? A sound wave that pushes people to the path of suicide? The answers are buried deep in the Atlantic. The families of the three keepers of the Eilean Mòr, Marshall, Ducat, and McArthur, still have no answers. There is no grave for them, only a vast expanse of blue water. Sometimes it is better to hide some truths, because knowing some truths can shake the foundations of human existence. The mystery of the Eilean Mòr is such a hidden truth. The rocks of that deserted island are still washed by salt water. The lighthouse, following its routine, sheds light on the dark sea. But the darkness beneath that light is very solid. We may never know exactly what happened that afternoon. Maybe they hugged each other for the last time, or maybe they did not recognize each other at all. The mystery is not just about the disappearance, but about that moment, when a person realizes how insignificant their science, their professionalism, and their life are in front of the forces of nature. When the sea takes someone away, it erases not only the body, but also their traces. The lighthouse of Eilean Mòr now stands as only a monument to human helplessness. When no one now descends those dark stairs of Eilean Mòr, a strange coldness has settled there permanently. There is no mechanical sound, only the sigh of the wind. Hundreds of poems and stories have been written about those three keepers, but the real truth is forever covered in the fog of that December 1900. Are their bodies still buried under the sand at the bottom of the sea, away to some unknown icy end of the North Pole? Another layer of mystery is revealed when we wonder, why did they let the lighthouse light go out? A keeper may die, but to him it is a sin to put out the lamp. Those who were sailing that night saw the lighthouse standing like a black mountain. No signal, no direction, as if the lighthouse itself had gone blind. Perhaps that invisible storm was a storm beyond logic, a mental catastrophe that no barometer can detect, that only twists the human soul. Even in this modern age, when a sailor passes by Eilean Mòr, he looks at that rocky tower from the deck at least once. An unknown uneasiness pierces his chest. Can any man-made device explain that primitive fear? No, because some fears can only be felt, not proven. If you listen to the walls of that lighthouse, you can still hear the sound of a gentle tapping, as if someone was desperately searching for a door to get out. The investigation documents are now lying in dusty archives. The names written in ink have faded, but the sadness of their disappearance is still fresh. This story reminds us again and again how small we are in front of the vastness of the sea. We want to conquer nature, but nature swallows us. In the end, Eilean Mòr stands as a symbol of a place where, if you can reach it, time stops and people are erased from history. Captain Harvey wrote in his last report, "The people are no more. Where they have gone, only the island and the sea know." When the tide hits the island in the dead of night, it seems as if the island wants to say something. But there are no ears left to understand that language. We will now bid farewell to this deserted island. We will leave behind those 3 empty beds, that half-eaten meal, and that one raincoat hanging alone. The waves of the Atlantic are constantly washing those stones. The lighthouse light is constantly flickering and flickering. Lonely, uninterrupted, and mysterious. Marshall, Ducat, and MacArthur, wherever you are, may the sea give you peace. And may Eilean Mòr keep her secret for another century. On some unknown horizon beyond the dark sea, perhaps a lighthouse still burns, whose guards never disappear. But in this world, Eilean Mòr stands alone. The story could have ended here if the logbook of that lighthouse had not been found today, where those unforgettable words were written on the last page. All is well. Is all really well? Or is there a cosmic void hidden behind that being well? Perhaps it is best to leave the answer to your imagination.
Thanks for watching. Like, share, and subscribe for more horror.